This just in, ladies and gentlemen. We have breaking news coming out of the United States Supreme Court in a 7-2 decision that Donald Trump cannot illegally restart deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. Well, why is that, ladies and gentlemen? One, we're not in a war with our foreign allies. But let's dive deep into more of the reporting. That one reason was the reason that I can personally tell you myself of one of the reasons why the Supreme Court refused yet again to rightfully, legally, and constitutionally, lawfully not let the criminal 34 convicted count predator, sexual predator, if that, restart deportations. Let's get into this new reporting by CNN, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, the article reads, Supreme Court blocks Trump from restarting deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. The Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen, the article reads, on Friday, blocked Donald Trump from moving forward with deportations under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act for a group of immigrants in northern Texas, siding with Venezuelans who feared they were poised for imminent removal under the sweeping wartime authority. The decision is a significant loss for the Trump administration, who want to use the law to speed deportations up and avoid the kind of review normally required before removing people from the country. But the decision is also temporary, and the underlying legal fight over the president's invocation has continued simultaneously in multiple federal courts across the country. The justices sent the case back to an appeals court to decide the underlying questions in the case, including whether the president's move is legal, and if it is, how much notice the migrants targeted under the act should receive. Two conservative justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, publicly noted their dissent. The court's unsigned opinion was notably pointed about how the government was handling the removals, and also how U.S. District Judge James Hendricks had dealt with the case at an earlier stage. The court pointed to another case that had reached it previously, that of Maryland man Kilmer Abrigo Garcia, who was mistakenly removed to El Salvador. The court noted that the administration of Donald Trump has represented that it is, quote, unable to provide for the return of an individual deported in error to a prison in El Salvador, unquote. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the legal breaking reporting by CNN, I will have you guys note that that is a bullshit, flat out lie, ladies and gentlemen. And here's why. Because back in the beginning of April last month, U.S. Democratic Maryland Senator, rightfully, legally, constitutionally, and lawfully, took a visit to El Salvador to check on his constituent, Kilmer Abrigo Garcia, and found out that Kilmer was still alive. And that El Salvador President Felix Ulloa, ULLOA, told U.S. Democratic Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen that that the United States currently has the jurisdiction in our court, thus meaning that Donald Trump yet again lied. Donald Trump lied about not being able to get Kilmer Armando Abrigo Garcia back from El Salvador. Because of this, ladies and gentlemen, Kilmer Armando Abrigo Garcia is still wrongfully, illegally, unlawfully, unconstitutionally still sitting in El Salvador, where he is from, but still that's not the point. His constitutional rights to due process were blatantly violated by this criminal administration, which is not a constitutional act to pay El Salvador. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, to wrongfully imprison migrants, such as Kilmer Armando Abrigo Garcia. Hence, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump can rightfully, legally be sued. And the immigration judge can have Donald Trump arrested if she so pleases to. Continuing with the article, ladies and gentlemen, in the legal breaking reporting. Given that the court said, quote, the detainees' interests at stake are accordingly particularly weighty, unquote, the court added that the way the Trump administration was handling the removals did not, quote, pass muster, unquote. Specifically, the justices pointed to the notice of only 24 hours that was, quote, devoid of information about how to exercise due process rights to the contest that removal. Rights to contest that removal, unquote. The Supreme Court sent the case back to the New Orleans-based 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for further review, saying in its order that the appeals court erred in dismissing the detainee's case. Quote, today's ruling effectively extends the temporary freeze that the justices put on the Alien Enemies Act removals from the Northern District of Texas back on April 19, unquote. Steve Vladeck said, who's the CNN Supreme Court analysis and professor at Georgetown Law, adding, quote, because the lower courts have blocked use of the act in every other district in which the president has sought to invoke it, that means it's effectively pausing all removals under the act until the Fifth Circuit and presumably the Supreme Court itself conclusively resolves whether they're legal and how much due process is if so, unquote. The court also appeared to criticize how Hendricks, whom Trump nominated to the bench in his first term, had handled the case. Hendricks declined to halt the removals and argued in his opinion that the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, was attempting to rush the district court to act. Well, ladies and gentlemen, looks like that's going to do it for this legal breaking analysis reporting and legal breaking update. If you did enjoy this legal breaking analysis video and legal breaking reporting, ladies and gentlemen, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Secondly, if you would like to make sure you're staying up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please feel free to hit the bell icon as well as the subscribe button, ladies and gentlemen. The bell icon is located directly beneath the screen here on the right hand side of the subscribe button. Thirdly, if you guys would like to also stay up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please consider following me on my social medias that'll be linked down below in the video description. I'm on Instagram, Snapchat, Threads, as well as TikTok. Fourthly, ladies and gentlemen, please help me reach and achieve the goal of 170 plus subscribers. The reason why I'm saying 170 plus subscribers, ladies and gentlemen, is because right after we reach and achieve the goal of 170 subscribers, we have more subscribers to reach and achieve right after we reach and achieve the goal of 170 subscribers. Thank you ladies and gentlemen, so very much for breaking and helping me reach the overall channel goal for the channel of 160 subscribers. Until my next legal breaking reporting, ladies and gentlemen, fifthly and lastly, please stay positive, even though I know it's hard for some of you guys at times to stay positive during these unfortunate, illegal, induced darkness times caused by the illegal, unconstitutional Trump administration, Trump regime. And know that justice will prevail correctly on the correct side of law eventually, despite Donald Trump and his illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional criminality of his regime and administration's illegal executive, illegal actions, and illegal behaviors. And until my next legal breaking reporting, ladies and gentlemen, I will talk to you guys in the next legal breaking reporting, legal breaking analysis update.